Welcome to New Commissioner Orientation Session 3. Here we're going to focus on operations. In this session, we're going to take a look at the governance model, the strategic plan, the annual work plan, task forces, how the staff is organized, and intergovernmental relationships. So remember the three expectations of commissioners. The first one was to be an active participant in the decisions on policies related to the Commission's core work. The second one was to participate in and support Commission accountability functions, particularly those related to assessing organizational progress and effectiveness. And the third one, support Commission efforts to achieve its mission. These expectations correlate directly with the Commission's governance model. The governance model is a modified version of John Carver's model for public boards. It was developed by Commission members with the help of a consultant, and it recognizes that all members do not have all the skills and knowledge required. But if all the skills are represented within the group of commissioners and members have confidence in each other, the work they do together will be solid. The commissioners called it service without guilt. You didn't need to know everything about everything. So this is a depiction of the governance model. As the work moves from the big picture to administration, the required time and the volume of technical details expands. So what happens when you look at what the commissioners have as most of their work and when they spend most of their time, and where the staff have most of their time and energy spent, it ends up looking like this. The major responsibilities for commissioners are vision, mission, values, goals, and the major responsibilities for staff are management and administration. But there is a place where commissioners and staff work together, and that's implementation of objectives. So for the staff, our core work, wherever it is that we spend most of our time observing, interpreting, and responding, that is the management and administration. And we support the commissioners by providing advice, access, and action that will inform their work around vision, mission, values, and goals. Then on the commissioner side, where they spend most of their work, they're making decisions by observing, interpreting, and responding to emerging issues, to requirements and changes in the communities and in the state and at the federal level. And they fulfill their accountability responsibility by reviewing and assessing. And then they support the staff in our core work by helping us with advice, access, and sometimes even action. So taking a closer look at the governance model from the commissioner's perspective, one major activity is making decisions that are related to the core work. And that happens by deliberating first and then acting. So the first step, of course, is observing, getting input from different sources, both internal and external, taking a look at not just information, but also events. Second would be interpreting that information and that input and filtering it through the mission, vision, values, and goals to see if it pertains and how it pertains to the work. And then responding by formulating how the organization will respond to the new information or events. A second aspect of commissioner work is fulfilling internal and external accountability. And that means reviewing and assessing progress on work plans and strategic plan and also grantees' efforts. And taking a look at, are the policies being adhered to and are mandates being met? Then there's the activity of supporting the commission as it's achieving its mission. And that means providing advice, bringing information or expertise to the table that helps the organization, providing access through connections that help the organization using your networks, and then helping to take action. That means providing some labor, taking some actions beyond the core board activities to help the organization, perhaps doing peer reviews, reviewing grants, doing site visits to grantees, writing letters, speaking on behalf of the organization, a number of other things that are outside of board meetings. Now we're going to move into a series of activities, and just like the first and second module, these activities are ones where there's a scenario and there's some possible answers, and what you want to do is you want to hit pause every time you see the word activity, a closer look, read through what is presented on the screen, select your answer, make note of it so it can be discussed at the debriefing, and then restart the presentation, going on to the next activity or on to the next topic. So at this moment, please hit pause and read through. Again, you're presented with a scenario about how does the governance model work. So select your response from what is below, hit pause at the moment, make note of your response, and bring it to the debrief. Then restart the presentation. Here's another scenario with options. Please pause the presentation, read through this, select your response, make note of it so it can bring it to the debrief and discuss it. And then when you're ready, restart the presentation. Do the same thing with this scenario. Read through it, select your answer, and that of course is after you pause the presentation, and when you're ready, restart. All right, at this point, we're going to ask you to wiggle around a bit, stretch, stand up, do whatever. Don't want you to get uncomfortable as we continue on. When you're ready, restart the presentation. At this point, we're going to move into talking about commission plans and commission planning processes. So of course, setting a direction through a strategic plan isn't just a good practice, it's the law. Federal and state law require the Commission to develop a 3-year comprehensive national and community service plan and annually update that plan. As part of the plan, the Commission is required to identify priority needs in the state that national service will target. It is also required to use an open and inclusive process for maximum participation in development of the plan and determination of state priorities. Volunteer Maine re-examined its approach to planning in the face of increasingly rapid change. To quote Alvin Toffler, "It does little good to forecast the future if the forecast springs from the premise that everything else will remain unchanged. For nothing will remain unchanged. The future is fluid, not frozen." In the last strategic planning process, the Commission used what is called real-time strategic planning. It comes from the military and the business world and is suited to environments with significant and constant change. It shifts the focus from objectives to opportunities to leverage strategic advantages. Actions and strategies to pursue are evaluated using mission, values, strengths, assets, resources, and constituents. Selected actions and strategies may be adapted or replaced or expanded in annual reviews based on changes in the environment, opportunities that arise, or components of the identity statement. So the Commission's identity statement was presented in session 1 of the series. It's also available in the reference section of the Hub if you want to revisit it and download it. you'll recall that it provides the sieve through which all decisions are made and through which changes in the strategic plan, such as changes in strategies, changes in directions, changes in major focuses, all of that would be fed through the identity statement before determining whether to take action. So the current strategic plan has 4 strategic opportunities and end outcomes. The first one is to serve as Maine's Center of Excellence on volunteer service. And there are 3 ways to do that. One is providing consultation and training on volunteer engagement and program operation. And that would be provided to 2 different groups. One, to the individuals who have to lead that work, to be sure that they have the skills, knowledge, and abilities they want to be effective and to get the end result that they're seeking. And then the second is to organizations that want to either start engaging community members as volunteers in their work or expand and be more effective and efficient in that engagement. A second tactic would be identifying key issues that are impacting Maine's volunteer sector and our grantees, and monitoring or researching those issues. And then third is providing information and data on the status of Maine's volunteer sector, as well as the civic health and civic engagement. Now, what is all of that done for? What is our end outcome? That is to identify and respond with appropriate supports to emerging challenges or opportunities encountered by Maine's volunteer sector. So the second strategic opportunity is to cultivate young volunteer and service leaders through newly established formal years of service. And there are two actually that were identified at first. One was the Maine Service Fellows. The second was the Maine Service Corps. The Corps became the Maine Climate Corps, and both of those have been set in statute. And the purpose is to leverage the impact that volunteer service has on attracting and retaining talented young adults. What's been shown in research is that if people have an opportunity to serve in a community, to set down roots, and to become really integrated into that community, they are much more likely to stay. So the end outcome is that young adults commit a year of service to helping a community address a pressing issue and develop not only a greater understanding of how to have an impact on community life, but that they also create ties to the community and potentially develop very deep roots and stay. So the third strategic opportunity for Volunteer Maine comes from the fact it's the only entity in Maine, public or nonprofit, that focuses on the capacity and sustainability of volunteerism in the public and nonprofit sectors. The Commission is a business-to-business entity, meaning that our constituents are organizations and individuals who are responsible for volunteer engagement or volunteer activity. And because we have that unique role to play, we are the public voice for the volunteer sector. And it's our job to increase recognition, visibility, and respect for the volunteer efforts, foster a culture of service and civic engagement across the state, and promote understanding of the connections between volunteering, civic engagement, and economic and community success. And that latter is really important when it comes to community resilience. So what's the end outcome that we're seeking? It's Volunteer Maine is the public name for the Maine Commission for Community Service and is the champion for volunteer service that contributes to the civic health of thriving Maine communities. The fourth and final strategic opportunity is that the Commission's grant-making activity is a powerful vehicle for fostering community service and volunteerism that's effective in addressing critical needs of Maine communities. So through the grant process, The Commission wants to support new approaches to encouraging rural volunteer service. It wants to support volunteer programming that targets aging in place, rural transportation, food security, and other critical needs as they emerge. It wants to support volunteer-powered solutions to these and other emergent community problems. And it wants to build the capacity of grantee organizations to effectively and sustainably engage volunteers. And if all of that is done well, the Commission investments in national service and volunteer programs will succeed in strengthening community capacity to solve local problems through service. So how do we identify what the priority needs are? So research is done about every 6 to 10 years to identify what are the issues the Commission should be investing in or encouraging applications for our grants to target those needs. When we review the strategic plan, needs assessment, and studies, we look at state agencies, state associations and coalitions, research and policy centers. We identify the needs and issues that repeatedly show up as critical or prevalent across the state of Maine. We conduct interviews of document authors or staff leads to find out how volunteers are engaged in that work now and what are the potential volunteer actions that could impact those needs and issues. Then we assess the full list to identify the highest priorities and then go out and seek public input on whether those are accurate, whether there are others, and it's entirely possible because some of those plans that are done by state agencies or associations or researchers may have a lag time between when they were done and then their current use and what's happening in the community right now. So we're very open to communities saying, Here is the second activity that's related to the material we just discussed. Again, pause the presentation, read through, make a selection or more. It's possible that some of these have more than one response. Make a note and then restart when you're ready. On this third activity, do the same thing. Pause the presentation, read through, make note of your responses, and when you're ready, restart. All right, feel free to move your arms around, stretch your neck, put your ear to your shoulder, just in case you're looking down at a small screen. And when you're ready, we'll proceed. Now, in session 1 of new commissioner orientation, there was a discussion of how the commission as a board organizes itself into task forces, what are the officer positions, and so forth. So now we want to talk about why they're called task forces rather than using standing committees. And that's because at the end of every strategic planning process, and actually sometimes during the annual review, the commission as a board looks at the work that needs to be done and determines whether or not it fits into the existing task forces. Does everything have a home that needs to get done? And once that exercise is complete, it stands back and says, okay, is there a body of work, not just a single activity, but a body of work that has no task force to drive it forward to ensure that it gets done? If that's the case, then one is created and given a mission. If there is a task force that has no work to do, then that task force gets retired. Through this process, then, the commission always has a dynamic operation overseeing every bit of the work that it has set as a priority. And there isn't a committee that's required to continue without any purpose. So here's an example of a task force charge, and it's looking at executive committee. So it's responsible for reviewing and making recommendations on legal, policy, and management issues to staff and the full commission. And you can see the other parts of it. It's responsible for acting on behalf of the commission. If something pressing comes up between meetings, it coordinates the orientation under the vice chair for new commissioners. It oversees strategic planning objectives that are related to board development. It oversees implementation of the strategic plan. Is everything moving forward the way it was envisioned? And developing the board meeting agendas and coordinating the work of all the task forces. So grant selection and performance, as you can guess, has two major responsibilities. When it comes to awarding funding, this particular task force operates the process to identify what proposals should be supported and to what degree should they be supported. So that's the selection part of it. It doesn't make final decisions. It brings everything to the board for vote. On the flip side, it looks at the performance of the grantees who are receiving funds from the commission and determines whether or not they are doing work that was funded. Are they meeting their goals and objectives? Are they managing the funds and using the funds in a way that the commission is comfortable with? Communications and public policy, I just want to point out that this sometimes is one task force and sometimes it is two. It rather depends on what the public policy agenda looks like. And if public policy gets very active, especially there are certain legislative sessions where multiple bills have been introduced that we were not expecting. So public policy and communications will split and go their separate ways for a while. But when they're together, it is about communicating with the public, with external stakeholders about what the Commission is doing, what the opportunities are that we are offering to the public, monitoring government actions and plans that could impact volunteer or community service or national service, and then keeping the board apprised of what is going on at the national and state levels in terms of policymakers and legislators. And also ASC, as you'll recall, is our trade association, America's Service Commissions, and they will also sometimes have public policy and communications initiatives. So, looking at this slide, there's something that is a little bit different. Your tasks are to use this link, copy it. Actually, there's an easier way. If you go to volunteermaine.gov and you look under the Commission tab, you will find task forces as a link, and it opens it up, and you can find all the charges for the task forces. And you're asked to read each one of those, and then under reports, find a set of meeting notes for a task force that interests you. So reports at volunteermaine.gov, when you go to Commission, there's a menu option that says reports. Under reports are the minutes for each of the task forces, and they're grouped by the name of the task force. So you'd want to decide based on a charge what's of interest to you. Go find those sets of minutes and see what they've been up to lately. For those of you who are visual, when you go to volunteermaine.gov, this is what the top menu looks like. And you can see when you put your cursor over the words "the Commission," that menu option, it opens up another menu, a submenu, and that's where you find task forces and reports. So you want to hit pause at the moment for the presentation, go poke around, find a set of minutes for a task force that's of interest to you, and then come back and restart. Now that you've had a chance to look at the charges for all of the task forces and look at some of the minutes and figure out what their current work is, you have a different kind of activity. All new commissioners are assigned to either the Grant Selection and Performance Task Force or Communications Task Force. And that's done because those are the two that give board members the best initial understanding of Volunteer Maine. At the same time, we understand that your interests may be more aligned with something else, something that's more advisory. So your activity now is to send an email to the Commission Chair with two pieces of information: your preference for serving on either grants or communications, and your preferred second assignment, one that's an advisory task force that's of interest to you. As you can tell, we're getting down into the nitty-gritty because now we're going to be talking about commission staffing and significant relationships. So we're going to start with significant relationships. The Commission lives in a network of federal and state relationships. You can sort of think of it like a fishnet. There's a set that are accountability, and that, of course, is the Federal AmeriCorps agency with its expectations of how funds will be handled, that will ensure that the rules and regulations are followed, and all of those sorts of things. There are the legislature's oversight committees. Our primary oversight committee is state and local government. There's the governor, There's the Department of Administration and Financial Services, which has all of the financial and risk management and human resource and other centralized administrative and financial functions. And it has its own set of rules and regulations and so forth. And then the Commission has a fiscal agent. It's an independent agency with a fiscal agent, and currently that is the Department of Education. Then we have a set of relationships that are partnerships. The Commission co-chairs the Volunteer and Donations Management Annex, or Committee, of the State Emergency Response Plan, and we also work with MEMA on a couple of other things. There is a partnership with the Maine Volunteer Foundation. You'll see in our statute a section that refers to a private support organization and allows the Commission to receive funds multiple times in multiple ways. It's kind of an exclusive relationship, funding relationship with a private entity, and that entity is the Maine Volunteer Foundation. There's also AmeriCorps, which we have a partnership as well as an accountability relationship. And the partnership comes around working together on recruiting, on public awareness, the number of funds or the amount of funds that comes to the state of Maine, all of those sorts of things. And then, of course, America's Service Commissions, which is a very important partnership as well. The next slide may seem a bit confusing, but take a minute to trace the network connections and the descriptions. As you can see, the relationships are very different. Very few of them are interconnected. Probably the only one would be between the Department of Education and their Oversight Committee of Education and Cultural Affairs. And we work together very closely when either of us is going to be addressing them separately. But take a minute, hit pause, follow the red lines in the descriptions to see how it works, and then restart the presentation. So as we've talked about, the Commission is an independent agency, but it doesn't have what they call budget authority, which means that we have a fiscal agent. And in order to be tied to the functions of state government, like human resources and payroll and all of those sorts of things, employee benefits, we need to work with the Department of Education or whoever our fiscal agent is at the time. So our statute says that the Commissioner of Education, in consultation with the Commission, so that's in consultation with the board, shall hire an executive director as a member of the department staff. And the executive director then oversees the day-to-day operations of the Commission, hires the staff members with approval of the Commission and the department, and carries out other responsibilities as directed by the Commission. So currently it says this is all about the Department of Education. Previously we had another state agency that was our fiscal agent, so they were referenced in these places. And then there is the distinct possibility that we will be changing fiscal agents again, and in the editing of the statute it will then refer to whoever is in charge of that department or that office. The important part is that the executive director is hired by whoever is in charge of that state agency, along with the commissioners, board members. Usually it's an officer or two, and then the executive director carries out responsibilities for the operation of the agency. So most of the staff positions are funded by National Service federal dollars. The positions that have been constant over time are the executive director, the grant officer, and the program development and training officer. So pretty much since 1997, those three positions have been around. Important positions that have waxed and waned because of funding changes, funding that comes, funding that goes, funding that expands or gets cut, are the communications officer, the office administrator, and the program officer for volunteer sector initiatives. That last one is a position that's dedicated to the training and technical assistance for organizations and individuals who are responsible for volunteer programming at the community level. Then the newest positions that are associated with major projects are the Climate Corps Coordinator and the Maine Service Fellows Coordinator. And both of those are currently on soft money, so they may also join the set above that kind of wax and wane. All of the commission positions are dependent on continued appropriations. So everybody is on what's called soft money. Although the org chart that you see here is a traditional supervisory one, the team works really collaboratively. We have always cross-trained. We can do each other's jobs to some level. And so because we have buckets of work that need someone to take the lead on them, we don't have teams within the office. The grant officer is responsible for all of the grant administration, management, monitoring, etc. And that's a pretty hefty job. Then the program development training officer is responsible for training grantees, training potential grantees, going out into the community and consulting and working with organizations that want to apply for grants or develop volunteer programs. And so it goes through all of those positions. So we support each other. We cross-train to know somebody else's job. We keep some common files and work and calendars and all of that sort of thing so that we can move into each other's space if an emergency arises. But everybody knows who's primarily in charge of a body of work. As part of the legislative budget and appropriation process, the number of positions for every government agency is set. This is called head count. And one of the really big differences between a private sector, if it's a nonprofit or for-profit, doesn't matter, and a governmental staffing situation is that in the nonprofit or the private sector, if you have a body of work that needs to get done and you've got the money to fund a position to get that work done, then you just write the job description and hire the person. That isn't the way it works in the governmental side. The legislature has to approve the position and then you can fill it. And so therefore you have to also justify why it should exist on an ongoing basis or whether it should exist only for what they call a limited period of time. And that's why it talks here about permanent and limited period. Currently, the Climate Corps position and the Maine Service Fellows positions are what are called limited period positions because they're tied to projects that have got a limited amount of funding. In other words, a source of funding that has a start date and a date when it has to be used by. So then there are positions that are ongoing that as long as the federal dollars are there, then they can continue to exist. Each position has a rank in the civil service system that's not evident from the functional title. So the rank is tied to a pay scale that's negotiated under a labor agreement. In our office, there are 3 civil service ranks at the moment. One is senior planner, and that is occupied by everyone except the office administrator and the executive director. So they are all in that same rank. And then the office administrator is a particular rank, and the executive director is another management rank. The pay scale typically has 8 steps, one for each year the person's in the position. Sometimes the governor or legislature will freeze, so that year is a little loosey-goosey. After 8 years, the salary maxes out unless there are adjustments under a labor agreement. And so let's take a look at a couple of staff roles and the official summary of duties in their job description. This is a little dense, so I encourage you to, after I give a brief description, to hit pause and then start the presentation over again or restart the presentation when you're ready. So the executive director of the commission, really the civil service rank, is a public services manager 1. That civil service rank has a broad description of what the purpose of the position is. And then the commission got an opportunity to write a more specific role description, and this is the summary. So hit pause, read through, and when you're ready, go to the next. The commission grant officer takes over once a grant has been awarded and is responsible for those activities and function that come during the life of the grant. So if it's an AmeriCorps grant that goes for 3 years, it will start with writing up the cooperative agreement, which is the grant instrument, and then over the first and second and third years, doing the monitoring, financial reporting, and so forth that are required to the board and to the federal agency. So hit pause, read through what this one is about, and then when you're ready, start with the next one. So while the grant officer does everything after the award, the program development and training officer has 2 sides. One is before a grant is written, helping organizations understand what the requirements would be, helping them design, helping them find a model in another part of the U.S. or somewhere that they might want to adapt or adopt to implement in their community. So there's that side. It's kind of the pre-application side to things. And then after an award is made, this is the person who helps them figure out how to do something. How do you bring on an AmeriCorps member? How do you recruit an AmeriCorps member? How do you document in-kind donations to the agency? How do you gather data to show that you're having impact? So it's that training portion of things. The person also works with those parts of the volunteer sector that are interested in doing organizational transformation around volunteer engagement. So it's quite a varied position. So again, hit pause, read through, and restart when you're ready. The communications officer we often refer to as a public information officer, PIO, because public information officer is a phrase that is used very often in government and that people understand. Externally, it would be communications, maybe even a little bit of marketing. So again, hit pause, read through this, and when you're ready, restart. The office administrator is a position that we would dearly love to have on a full-time basis because it is such a critical piece. Currently, the position is filled at a half-time basis, and the responsibilities are spread among all staff when the person's not here. So again, hit pause, read through, and when you're ready, restart. I've talked a number of times about this position, so I'm just going to suggest that you pause, read through it, and when you're ready, restart. To view who is currently holding the positions, you could go to volunteermaine.gov and under the commission, just pick the staff team option and it will bring up everybody's photo and title with a very short bio. Believe it or not, we're getting near the end, and the next activity is going to be one that, although we've covered a lot of ground, helps hopefully bring it all together and helps you apply what you've learned or what's been discussed. So this is a matching activity, and of course, I'm going to ask you to pause the presentation. And then what you want to do is you want to look at the black text on the left and match it up with a description that fits on the right. So the purple side is the description and the black text is the name of the entity. So pause, do your matching. This doesn't allow you to drag and drop because we've turned it into a video, but make note and bring it to the debrief and press restart when you're ready to go. And here's another matching situation. On the left side is a scenario, and then on the right side are the positions at the commission. And what you want to do is to identify who is most responsible for helping out in each situation. So hit pause, go through, do your matching, and then when you're ready, restart. So here we are at the end. You've completed session 3. The reflection questions are: what is still muddy? What are you curious about? Make notes, bring those to the debrief, and then you'll get a prize for knowing the passcode. And the secret passcode for this session is Inner Workings. Thank you so much for doing this, and we will see you at the debrief. Keep up the good work. After this session, there are 3 more to go. We look forward to talking to you.